today, what we're going to do is that we'll just get started with news site 1. So over the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to be building upon this news site. It's basically a Reddit clone, and in the end, you're going to have something that looks like this, if it loads. Okay. You're going to build something like this, Now, it's not especially the nicest looking thing, but it is extraordinarily functional with many different components on the page. So we have an entire Navbar page where it's like, if you go to like a regular website, let's say like the Wall Street Journal or something like that, I'm not sure that what the Wall Street Journal is built on. It may or may not be React. I'm guessing it's not. That's a similar thing where they have all of this stuff up here. And if I click on politics, it makes an entire request and gets an entire response that comes back. When we talk about things like this opinion world national, like if we had to build it ourselves, like you can kind of see it's pretty quick because it's all loaded in on your page already. Now, if I go back to this home page here, I have different sections. So like all my opinion articles will be right here. I should probably just call this a Wall Street Journal clone instead of a Reddit clone. All my things revolving around the world will be over here. I can click on an individual article, and then it takes me to an individual article. This should probably be 1 instead of 0. I also have the search functionality. So if I look up a keyword, let's say I want to look up comedian, it literally searches through it based off of every keystroke that I have to just narrow it down to one thing. On top of that, I have the ability to log in. So it's john@doe.com, and I think it's just open sesame. So now I'm logged in, and I have the ability to, create a new article, submit it. I successfully created it. I go back to the home page. It's there at the bottom. Like it's all fast because it's happening on the front end. So your browser is getting updated automatically, and then it's making a request in the background to your database so that the next time that you refresh it, it'll be there.
It's built on Rails.
This is built completely on React.
How do you do the login?
What's that?
What's the login?
There is a login functionality for React, and we'll cover that in like news site 4 or 5.
Did you use that crush timestamp?
What's that? The CRUD concept still remains the same. Yeah, it's like we're still. It's a little bit different. Like the implementation is different, but the concept is still the same. Like we can still, as I don't have all of the functionality of create, read, update, destroy right now, but you're able to create.
How are they being stored?
It's being stored. As of right now, there's actually 2 things running. So I have a web server at 3001, and I have a React server for the front end loaded at 3000. So I have a back end and a front end running at the same time. Yeah.
So are the actual stories themselves saved in
yeah,
or something? Or
it's actually just as of right now. There's no database. It's just being stored inside of a
local storage.
Inside of a file.
Oh,
it's just being stored in a file right now. So it's mimicking. It's not really set up that way.
Okay.
But essentially, what we're going to get to down the road is that we have one server that's running at 3000, port 3000, which is just the React what you see on the front end, and then your Rails server is going to be running at another port, maybe 3001. You can make it 2000. You can name it whatever you want. So basically, if somebody fills out all the information, I have to fix that. So when you create this new article, you fill out the form, and then you press submit. It makes it into JSON and sends it over to your Rails app, and then it goes to /post/new or something like that. And then you'd save it into the database, and then it comes back out to the screen. So that's the ultimate goal of this logout. So we're going to build slowly, day by day, to get to that point. Yeah.
Seems like Rails is a whole extra step. I mean, don't we just need the ORM, like the like the database management system, whatever?
Yeah, they definitely have. You can. They have full stack JavaScript now, which is what. Yeah, it's Node, which basically means like I have some JavaScript code that's taking care of the front end.
Yeah.
I have JavaScript code that's in the middle for the middleware, and I have a JavaScript code on the back end. And they have their own JavaScript ORM called Sequelize, I think is called. And there's a variety of other JavaScript ones. So it's possible to teach like full stack like JavaScript development. You're not entirely false in saying that Rails could be an extra step, but Rails is just very, very easy to set up. And then setting up an ORM and database in JavaScript is a little bit more challenging than setting up Rails. And Rails just has like more support and documentation in terms of like, I want to get a database or like a web app running in the background super fast. You know, Rails does stuff really, really well. Like all the backend stuff, all the routing and the controllers and the like the talking to and from the database, and that's all the stuff that Rails does really well. Rails sucks at front end. Like it's just not good.
So the forms and the layouts and all that stuff is
It's slow, right? It's like it's all like I have to load a whole new page and I have to wait for a request and response. Whereas like React is like I'm just clicking around, like this is happening in a fraction of 1 second, right? Whereas like Rails might take 1 or 2 seconds, you know. So it's like React does the front end really, really well, but React is not a back end language.
So there'll be no routes anymore in Rails.
You would still.
Oh, we still need routes.
You still need routes, yeah,
No
because
layouts.
there's no layouts, yeah.
And you could pass in JSON instead.
So there would be routes for the front end and for the back end. So it's like when I click on national, like the front end would take a like /section/national, right? But if I wanted to create something in the database, I still have those same routes. I just don't have a view that corresponds with those routes. So this is what we're going to build over the next 2 weeks or so. And we're using Bootstrap actually to style this a little bit. Until we get there, though, we're going to start with news site number 1. And I figured it might be a good use of our time for the first, I think this will only take like 30 or 40 minutes. I figure it's probably be pretty good for me to run through news site 1. We'll record everything. And then I'll just leave it to you to like basically go through it yourself to try to piece all the things that we talked about together. And then we'll do retro, and then we'll do check-ins and retro. So we're going to start off here. Before we get started, kill the server. I'm going to cd into news site 1. By the end of today, hopefully it will look a little something like this. It's not pretty, I must warn you. It's not like the fully finished product, but we're building up incrementally. In the end, it's going to look something horribly like this. And what it looks like is like I have the ability to like get all the links up on the top, like all the headers and things like that, and then I can click and it does nothing. I can get a random article that will read from a database, or not database, from a JSON file, and then some of them will have pictures, some of them will not, and then I can click this and it'll take me down to the, actually won't do anything. But yeah, every single time that I refresh, I should be able to get like an article teaser, because like, you know, when you go to like a Wall Street Journal, they don't have the entire article up at first, right? They say just kind of like, here's a little bit of teaser just to get it started. So we're going to call that article teaser. And then at the bottom, we have like the entire article. It's pretty short. So this is what we hope to get by the end of today. Before then, we'll clone this down. All right, I'm going to cd it to the news site 1. And I'm going to run npm install, same thing to bundle install. It's going to install everything, which might take a little bit of time. Rod, CTC is coming at 1:30.
Okay. Great.
John and his boss is going to come.
Wait.
Yeah. And then John's going to stay afterwards for a data structures lecture.
Nice. I have a call for this boss at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Had you already in the repo? Had you already created like a create React app?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. As long as I see a source there. Yeah. So you're going to basically what's going to happen with new site 1, 2, 3 as we move forward is you're going to more or less just grab your entire source folder from the day before and copy it into the next day's worth of stuff and just keep building off of that. So it'll get gradually larger and larger. Maybe this makes a little bit more sense now when they say like, oh boy, my NPM package is here. Oh my gosh. Oh, finally, okay. So now we can do npm start just to see what we've started with. All right, so this is what we hope to get, and this is what it looks like right now, which is literally nothing. Now it's basically like all it is just a bunch of H1s right now, which said like all your nav components supposed to go right here, your article teaser is supposed to go here, and your article component is supposed to go here as well. So the instructions are pretty self-explanatory. So basically, we're going to create 3 components, these nav, article teaser, and article. And all of those components have been stubbed out, and we have to write the code to make it look like the way that we want it to look. So if we take a look at inside of source, inside of components, we have a folder for every single component. Remember we talked about we want single responsibility, everything. We don't want to just dump everything in one giant folder. Similarly, we don't want to dump all of our code in one file. So we have a specific folder for the article, which has the article component and a corresponding test component. So we've written out all of the tests for you already, so you can just run npm test. There's also an article teaser component that we'll work on, article and nav. And that all goes inside of here. Let's kind of see what else we've got. So we have app.js, where we have a constructor right up the top, which is similar to Rails' initialize. We're inheriting a bunch of stuff from component. We're choosing a random article index, which is just a number. And then from there, we're going to just choose a random article. We have a bunch of, we have a nab items array with a bunch of hashes inside of our state, which just has like home, opinion. Remember, it's that top layer where the navbar is going to be. And then all this extra code down here, where we have a specific article with it. This specific article has an index, has a title, has an abstract, and like basically all the information that you would ever need to know about the article. From there, we have that giant H1 that says nav component, then article teaser component, then article teaser. And you can see I'm passing things down from app.js into these individual components. So this nav component is going to take a bunch of props, which is one of them is basically nav items. Another one is called handled nav click. And then like this article teaser is going to take an ID, title, created at date, and things of that nature. And then we have the article component at the bottom. So if we jump over into this first one, it basically tells us like, what do we need to do in order to get this article teaser working? So the article teaser component should accept the following props: an ID, a title, a created at, and a handle click. All these props are always going to be passed in. So based on the props that we're getting thrown down, like all the things we're getting passed from the parent, we have to create an article teaser component. So we're going to display the title, which is always going to be passed down inside of an A tag. And then whenever we click on that, it should call this dot props dot handle title click. And then we should have a created date inside the p tag. So we'll just deal with this first one right here. Is it article teaser? Yeah. All right. Let's just actually. So the first things first, it says that it accepts props. So the first thing I need to do is to create a constructor that's going to take in some props. And then I'm just going to super props. Maybe I need this dot state, perhaps. I'm not sure. This dot state equals some hash of stuff, and we'll just leave it for now. All right. So it says display the title inside of an A tag. All right. So I will throw an A tag in here. And it says that I'm always going to be passed in a title from the props. And I want that title to show up somewhere on the page. So let's not worry about this second half. Let's just get title to show up in an href somewhere on the page. So I'll just send it to nowhere. And then how do I read in? So I'm always going to be passing props from the parent. And inside of those props, I'm going to get a title attribute. So how do I access the title?
Props.
So I'm passing like a large hash of stuff. And if you take a look inside of app.js, article teaser, which is right here. Article teasers, I'm always passing an ID, title created date, and handle title click. Right? So since I'm passing these things down, this is all being saved as props. So when I access it inside of article teaser, it's just this dot props, because that's what's being passed down to me. And inside that giant hash of stuff that's being passed down, there is a title, which is passed down on line 68. Let's see if this does anything. So we'll go back to our React app. And there's our, inside of article teaser, there's that title that was passed down. And we can refresh, it'll give me another title every single time. When I click it, it just takes me to slash hashtag, because it doesn't do anything. So we've done this, and now we're on number 2. When the title is clicked, it should call this.props.handle title click this.props.id. And will arrow functions be useful here? So maybe we'll grab this. And I have to put this giant block of code somewhere on the page. So when I click on the href, it's going to execute this line of code. So what do I type next? So when I click on the A tag, it's going to execute this line 14. I just kind of put this here as like a placeholder for now.
Oh, like you want it on click.
I do want it on click. So whenever I click on this, I'm going to execute.
Is this being recorded?
Yes. I'm going to pass this.props.handle click this.props.id. Now let's take a look. So when I click on this, it executes this giant line of code, which means that I was passed down a property called handle title click, which is going to take in this.props.id. So let's go back up and see handle title click. All right, so I see that I have an article ID, and it's just going to console log the ID. If all goes well, and this refreshes, that means that when I click on this, it should print out the number, but it's not doing anything. It says when I click it, it should go back up and hit this, but it's not doing that. Any ideas why that is happening? So it's like immediately it's firing off like the number inside of app.js, as you can see here. But whenever I click it, it's not actually console logging that. It's not actually console logging.
It's
And
supposed to console log.
it's supposed to console log every single time that I click it.
Oh, okay. Let's go back.
Let's go back over here.
Change the state.
It's not the state. So this dot props dot handle click this dot props dot ID.
In app.js,
Well,
does it say that it's
You need to
doing
execute some
console
kind
log?
of function or something.
I do
Click,
need to
right?
execute the function. So whenever I click it, I'm going to actually just change this whole thing into an arrow function.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Let's go back. Yep, there we go. I refresh it just to test it out with somebody else. 13, I'm clicking it that many times. When almost all the time that you want to write functions inside of JavaScript now, especially with ES6, it doesn't hurt just to make everything an arrow function. What's the benefit that we learn about arrow functions?
Or is it this is immediate, or you don't have to invocation or something?
Mm-hmm.
This is referring to the parent's context. So it's always going to refer to the components context of this instead of the like another context. So that's like the most important thing to think about with arrow functions. There are some moments where that's not going to work, but when it comes to React, like you're most likely always going to want the components version of this. So it's best to utilize arrow functions.
So you're saying we just don't have to bind this? When we
Yeah, you don't have to bind that, yeah. So the arrow functions, which look a little something like this, which is it first takes whatever parameters you're going to want to pass into your function, and then the arrow, and then the actual thing that's being executed. The arrow functions automatically bind this to the context that you're in. It's similar like when we were the first day, maybe you have a better idea now. The first day we were talking about if you're at a fancy nightclub and you're on the VIP level, there are certain things that you get automatically, right? You get Dom Perignon champagne and you get like Grey Goose everything or something like that, right? And that's something that you have the right to have because you're a VIP. Now, let's say you want to leave the VIP area and go to the regular floor, and you go up to the bartender and you say, I would like some Dom Perignon. And they're going to look at you like you're crazy because you can't order that when you're on the main floor. So you have to say, you have to bind to yourself, hey, I'm actually a VIP. So when you leave the VIP room, they'll give you a bracelet or something like that. And then when you go up to the bar, you show them the bracelet and you say, I'd like to order Dom Perignon. And they're like, okay, the context, since you're a VIP, I can tell based on your wristband. And when you have your wristband on, like, I know that you're a VIP, thus I can give you Dom Perignon. Otherwise, it's out of context. Like, the regular people can't ask for it because it's not something that regular people get. Similarly here, since I'm passing this .props.id up to app.js, they are not really sure what that, like the context of this is anymore. So when you do these arrow functions, it automatically binds this to the context that you're referring to.
But can you just equal sign with the bind?
Yeah, wouldn't bind do the same thing then?
I think so. Ooh. So I think I'm putting in the entire thing.
I think you have to say this and then comma this stuff.
Like that?
You have to bind this and also bring in.
So that?
I don't think so. Yeah, like in. I don't think you need those parens. You need the first paren, but not
The dot and this dot.
like you're gonna want to bring both of those fields in. Do you do this dot props dot handle title click dot bind this and then comma the.
Never mind.
All right, we'll just go back to the arrow function. Arrow functions for everything. All right, so, and then finally we have to just display the created at date in a p tag, which is pretty simple for us. So we just do a p tag here, and then we do the created at date. What do I type here?
What are we doing now? Create that?
Created at, yeah, created date, I think.
Create.
What's the name of the variable?
Created underscore date.
Okay, cool. This not prompts like
Okay, this dot props dot created date. All right, and if everything works, we can see it show up on the page, and there's nothing. What the heck? Let's take a look at the, looks like there might be a bug here. Let's go back up into app.js and see what they're passing down. So we're on the article teaser component, and we expect to get a created date to come back to us.
You still want bind?
Oh, it's created date, no underscore.
Ah, created date, no underscore.
Ruby versus JavaScript.
Mhm.
Okay.
Still no good.
Find this.
Nope.
But not if we're using an arrow, we don't need that bind.
It's not that. So let's take a look. So it says I'm passing down created date, so I'm accessing it correctly. So let's take a look what the value is. This.state.article.created date. All right, so that means that somewhere inside of this particular component state, there's an article. So I'm going to go this.state, jump down to article.
There's an underscore in that one.
There's another underscore, another typo.
It's
It's not consistent. All right, let's take a look and see what's going on. There we go. There, it comes back out. And that's it. That's it for article teaser. We're making good time.
Design challenges here.
What's that? There are no design challenges. It's literally like we have all the stuff. Let's just wire it up.
No, I mean, is this what somebody like purposely embedded some errors in there so you have to like?
I think so. I think when it was first created, it was done like that on purpose. So component number 2, article. The article component should accept the following props, all of these things here. Title, abstract, and created date props will always contain values. Image and byline may be there, but they also might be nothing. So be sure to account for this. All right, we'll deal with that. So first things first, we have display the article title inside of an H1 tag, created at, and okay, we'll just do the number 1. So we finished with our article teaser, jump over into article, and now we have, inside of an H1, they said, I want the title. So I'm going to do this.props.title. And hopefully something will show up. And, oh, that's gross. What are the curly braces?
JavaScript code.
It's JavaScript code. What is the, so it's like in HTML it's called ERB, and JavaScript, what is it called?
JSX.
JSX. I think JSX stands for JavaScript and in XML or and XML. So refresh, go, do something. Okay, Hong Kong subway fire injures at least 17 people. Oh, well, that's kind of dark. Let's go for a friendlier one. Breaking up the family is the way to break up the that's also sad. Okay, well, this is all sad. News is sad in general. All right, number 2, display the created at date in a p tag, and it says that created at will always be there. Simple. Mickey, tell me what to type here. P. Created. It's I think it's created underscore date. We'll find out. Actually, let's check first. So you're saying I pass in the article with the entire thing about article. What is this? What's the 3 dots in the front?
Spread.
The spread operator, which means that I'm basically taking all of the contents inside of this article and just shoving it in here. So it is going to be created capital D date. And then a closing P tag. Go back over here. All right, we got our created at. Everything looks good to me. All right, now we have something a little bit more difficult, because it's like display the byline if it exists inside of an H2 tag. And similarly, just display the image if it exists inside of an image tag. So let's just deal with number 3. So we may or may not be getting a byline inside of our props. So how do we put that inside of an H2?
Make the H2, then put a
H2. Okay.
and then ellipses and the variable inside of there.
This dot props dot byline.
Well, I was gonna say like any old variable, just call it something if like possible byline, and then put the logic above it.
Oh, okay. So you're saying let byline or possible byline?
I mean, I put it outside of the return.
You put it outside the return. Why do you do that?
Put it like under render and outside of the return,
Why?
just so it doesn't return it into.
Yeah. The issue right now is if I refresh this page right here, I have literally the words of let possible byline. So everything that goes inside the return is actually going to get rendered out to the screen. So if you want to do some sort of code, like JavaScript code before the render, it has to go outside of the return. I mean, it doesn't get returned to the screen. So I'm going to do let possible byline. You just said just make it an empty variable for now.
I was saying inside the H2, put possible byline. This dot possible byline. Actually, it wouldn't be.
I think it's just.
Sorry, just be this. Yeah.
Okay.
And then let possible byline equal either a function or if you want to put your logic right there.
I will just have an empty variable for now. So it's basically if this dot props dot possible dot byline, then we'll just do byline possible. And then I don't think I actually need this H2 at all. That's one way of doing it. I could also just remove the H2s. So basically I have an empty variable on line 5. Possible byline is literally just set to null because it's, I could do this or I could just do equals null. It's up to you. This one's a little less typing. And basically I'm saying if this props.byline exists, that's the if check right there. If there's anything that gets returned, this will evaluate to true. Then I'll set the variable, the empty variable equal to the H2, this props.byline, and then this is what shows up here. And then similarly, actually, let's just see if that works. All right, so the byline is right here. It looks like it's always going to be there for some. Not all of them have an image though, and we're going to move on to the next one. So using that same logic, an image is going to come to us, and an image has a URL. If we jump inside of our number 4 here,
But instead of either the possible byline, can you just put this byline?
could I just put it directly in here, are you saying? Well, the issue with it is sometimes it won't exist. So if I do this, do all of them have a byline? Maybe they do.
The point is, at some point you might not,
Yeah.
unless it's some required data piece that you're getting from data.
Yeah. As of right now, it looks like all of them do have a byline. Let's use that same image. Let's use your same line of logic for the image right here. All right, so I have an image source coming in. It's going to be this dot props dot source attribute of the image tag. Let's take a look. src, there's an image right here. This dot props dot image. All right, so you're saying, why don't you just put it in, and if it doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist. The issue with that now becomes, okay, this one is fine because there's a picture there. This one also has a picture. This also has a picture. Like, you don't really want to have a, like, you don't want it to just render out on the page if it's not there, even though like it's still working. So I want to basically say, like, if it exists, then set it up there. If it doesn't exist, then don't set it up there. So I'm going to set up another one called image. So if the props that you're passing in has an image, I'm going to set image URL equal to source this props.image. And then over here, instead of just like hard coding like H2 and image, I'm just going to do byline, a possible byline, and then image URL. If all goes well, I have all of those things that I need here.
Isn't it sort of the same thing?
Yeah.
It is kind of the same thing.
Because it's going to display a blank.
It's just going to be display a blank thing, but it's like, why would you want it? Why would you want a blank image there if you don't need to render the image at all? That's all. But it functionally looks the same.
And if you set that the functional is still the same. I mean, it still show like no image if they don't have image.
So because it's just skipping it. If it doesn't exist. Otherwise,
You shouldn't render something.
yeah, that makes sense.
Not.
Oh, you mean as a when you run, like it just
It's just a function, right? So it's looking at it. If it's not there, it just continues to the next line. It doesn't do anything. So that makes sense.
So as of right now, like, I know it like functionally works the same way, right? But the issue right now is I have an image tag. It's going to be a blank image, so nothing shows up on the screen, but there's a huge gap between the byline and this next thing that says hello, right? And that's because every single time I'm rendering an image, even if there's not one.
Additionally, if you were looking at a screen reader, you would have a blank image with blank alt, and then people would be like, well, what is this supposed to be? Right? So you're giving like blank information that's not really supposed to be there.
All right, we're on to our last one. We're on the nav component at this time. So the nav component should accept the following props: nav items, which is an array of nav item objects, and handle nav click, a function. Will arrow functions be useful here? We've discussed this. Arrow functions are going to be useful everywhere. All right, so the nav component should return a nav component that contains many A's as children, one for every item in the nav.props.navItems array. Okay, so this nav component should map through this.props.navItems to create an array of A elements, and the elements within this.props.navItems look a little something like this. It's a hash or a JavaScript object with a key and a particular value. When we want to map through it, we want to use the label property as the text that shows up on the screen because we want capital NY region rather than the value. At the same time, when we click on it, we want the value to actually show up in the console. Let's take a look at app.js. There is a nav component that we're passing a bunch of stuff in. So we're passing it from app.js. There's a property called navItems that the value is going to be this.state.navItems, which is this giant array of stuff. And then when I handled the nav click, I'm just going to console log what the person clicked on. Similarly, down here, when we clicked on the article, it's just going to print out the article ID in the console. So we finished with article and article teaser. Now we're on to app.nav.js. maybe whenever I load this page, I'm just going to run this dot create navbar. And then that means I'm going to need to create a create navbar function. So whenever navbar loads, it's going to immediately load up navbar. It's immediately going to run this create navbar function that we're going to create right here. So I'm going to create it. I'm going to do let output equal this dot props dot nav items dot map. And I'm going to need some sort of I'm going to need a arrow function of some sort. So this .props.nav items is this entire list of nav items right here. And each one of them has, each one is going to have an index and it's going to have a particular item. So I'll just call this maybe nav item singular. And I'm going to keep track of the index that they're at as well. I'm just going to return a bunch of A elements out to this page. So maybe key equals the index. href goes nowhere for now. And then on click. So when I click this, I'm going to have an arrow function that's just going to do handle nav click. And what's going to show up to the screen is going to be nav item.label and then closing A tag. All right. So if all works well, if I refresh this page, I should get a whole bunch of nav components, but I get nothing. Oh. Now I have all of my things printed out on the screen right here. And if I click on each individual one, it will just console log the one that I've clicked on. And we'll use more of this next week, when we in 2 weeks when we continue building on this. So we have a nav component already here inside of the render. And as they wrote inside of the README here, that this nav component is going to have a nav tag with a lot of A's as children underneath. So I need to create a list of links to the. I need to create a bunch of links to the different sections. So I have a list of all the nav items inside of props, and I'm going to map over all of them. It's kind of like a each with index. So each with index keeps track of each individual thing as well as the index that you're at. So I have that particular nav item. That's good. What shows up on the screen is going to be the label. And then when I click it, it's going to pass it up to the function above, which is right here. And then it needs to know about which item that you actually clicked. And it's going to be the value.
Why is in the row? Why doesn't they go as a list?
Why is it in a row and why doesn't it go as a list?
Yeah, it's right there. How come it's go as a list?
Are you confused about what output looks like when it's being returned?
Yeah, when output is returned as one text after text after text, right?
So let's take a look. Let's take a look what output looks like. So when output looks like this, it looks like it's an array of different objects. And that each one of those objects is should be a link. It's a type of A. The href goes to here. And then it has 3 children. The thing that shows up that they care about is this home, which is that first one right there. And then you go to number 1. It's another href, has all these props. The children, the one that they care about is going to be opinion, and that shows up over here. So this is where we hope to end up today. I'm guessing this will only take most people somewhere in the, since we've gone over it, probably somewhere in the vicinity of an hour or two. So let me stop recording here, actually.